All right, everybody, welcome to this live stream. So, Brian from My Tesla Weekend and I do this every Wednesday. So, Brian, I think for today, what I've been wanting to talk about is the Tesla stock. It's really hard for some people. Now, I've been holding the stock since 2012. I'm a long-term investor. I do not look at the stock price. I did just take a peek right now, and it looks like it went down by $7. And it's still kind of, we still have 3 more hours. But I don't look at it. We know that the stock's going to go up. It's going to go down. Tesla is unique, right? It is very volatile, and it's so difficult. There's always going to be news every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, something falls and it falls. So what I wanted to share is some data that I got from James of InvestAnswer, talking about, the way that the Tesla stock is very volatile. And so what I wanted to talk to you about is, it's tough, right? For many investors, they have a hard time holding, and you have this hope, and yet it's backed up by some real products and real earnings and real, marketplace disruptions. And yet there's still daily, weekly, monthly pain that's happening now. So welcome, Brian. Thank you for joining me.
Pleasure as always. It's fun to watch. There are people who will come to our channel, get our advice, and then throw it out the window and say, I bought a week ago and now I'm scared, so I sold and I lost money. And I said, who on earth told you to do such a thing? Certainly not I. Now, of course, we don't give financial advice. I don't tell people what to invest in. My own friends and family, my own children, I do not tell them what to invest in because I cannot predict the stock market. What I can do is look at companies and determine their health, determine if this is something that I think is going to be doing better than the market over the next 10 years. And that's the kind of thing I look at. My investment horizon is not a year or 2 or 5, it's 10 plus. And I think that's because we can't predict the market. We'll never have access to the information that the professional traders see. We'll never be faster than the high frequency algorithms. We don't have an army of engineers and analysts at our disposal. What we have is the ability to look past the noise and see if something makes sense or not. When we looked at Nikola, we looked at it and said, there are some serious problems here. And then, of course, people jump back and say, yeah, but I'm up 20% since Thursday. Right. Well, maybe sell. I don't know what to tell you because I'm looking at it at the 5-year, 10-year horizon, and it's looking bleak. So that's where I come from.
Yeah. Well, today's conversation, right? We're not talking about being traders. We're not talking traders, not traders, traders being trading the stock, right? We're not talking about
traitor.
Yeah, Tesla bears. What we're talking about today are people who are invested in Tesla stock. And how should you look at this? Because there are certainly people who did just buy recently, or maybe who bought just a couple of years ago when the stock was at its all-time high, and every day it's falling, and that's how do you look at it. So let's share some stats first, and then let's open up the conversation. And folks, if you're watching this, if you got any questions or want to give some comments, I'll post it up as well. So here's I did an interview with James from Invest Answers, and he was pretty incredible the way that he looked at Tesla. And he shared this data point, which I thought was really worthwhile for me to share with folks here today. So if you look at this, this is Tesla's best months historically and the worst months historically, okay? So the best months, you can see here in May 2013, the stock rose by 74%. In August 20th, it rose by 71% during that 1 month. And November 10, April 20th, you see this right here. So you can see that the best months, it can actually jump pretty significantly from 43% to 74%. But there are worse months. Oh my gosh, some terrible months. And the one we just saw, of course, was December 2022. We just all went through that period. We saw the stock fall to $100. It fell by 37% in that 1 month, okay? And then it fell all these other times in its history, it can fall 20% or higher, right? It's very, very volatile. But I wanted to point out, now I know this is very inexact science and you can't be looking at this. It's just interesting. But the best months when it jumps, it's much higher than the worst months when it falls. So the falling part is only 20% to 37% so far. And then, but then the return is 43% all the way up to 75%. It could really, really jump when it decides to jump. Now, again,
So,
this is using a
gotta-
month, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Right, but I need to add perspective. If a stock goes down 50%, to get back to that same level, it needs to go up 100%.
Look, can we talk about that? Because that's a little bit of my pet peeve. Can you please educate
Yes.
me? People say this all the time, okay? Christian Valente, he loves to tell me that this is the case. He'll say, don't you know that if a stock falls, let's give you an example. Okay, let's say you have $100 stock and it fell to $50. Okay, that's a 50% decline, right? But in order for that $50 to get up to $100, oh my gosh, it has to be 100% gain. That's what you're saying.
Right. Yes.
It's a ridiculous way to think of things. Why? If something's worth $100, I sell you something. I have this thing. I have like, I don't know, 5 running shoes, and I sell you 2 of them, whatever. And now it's 50. Now, if I buy it exactly the same amount, I'm back up to the same amount. I just lost $50. I can gain $50. There's no difference. The market cap is still the same. Don't think of it in percentage terms. That's a ridiculous
Right.
way to look at it.
I didn't bring up the percentages you did, but what I will say is, if it only goes down 10%, it only needs to go up 11%. And
Gotcha.
we're not talking about 70% drops. We're talking about, 20% drops and then a 60, 70% jump. So the spread is still different. Even if you normalize it to points, those jumps are still better than those falls.
Okay.
And that makes
Understood.
sense because over the long term, we can see the stock is up substantially.
Okay. No, I get that point. So thank you for pointing that out. Because it's a philosophical mindset that people have. This is part of our conversation today, right? Many people have more pain when a stock falls than they feel the gain, the pleasure, the joy when it rises. And so for them, that's how they're thinking about it. Oh my God, it fell. I'm going to have to double how it's impossible to get back up to where I was because it's 100% gain versus a 50% loss. And I think that's a psychological issue. Now let's talk back to Tesla. This is another table that James from Invest Answers shared with me when I interviewed him. And if you look at the history, now this is a log scale, you can see that typically what happens to Tesla is flat for many years, then it jumps. Flat for many years, then it jumps. Flat for many years, and then it jumps. Then it's flat again. And this is where we're at today. And in those flat periods, you can see lots of volatility, up and down, up and down, up and down, but seemingly going nowhere. That's where we've been for the last 3 years. Okay? In the period of that 3 years that we've been seeing the stock flat, in fact, it fell from the all-time high of 400 down to 100. Now we're 220, wherever we're at today. It's very painful. But what has happened in those last 3 years? Just like in the last 10, 20 years, right? The company continues to progress. They're selling more cars. They've introduced bots. They've introduced energy. And then there's this hope, right? So we're now talking about this hope. Just wait until next quarter when the Cybertruck is released. Oops, Cybertruck is going to be small numbers for the next 2 years. Don't get your hopes up. Just wait till bots become a big thing. Oh, don't you know? Don't get your hopes up. It's not going to be something, and not going to sell it in big numbers until 2 years from now. We're always waiting for these things to happen. But if every quarter happens, there's progress. And I know some investors who look at earnings, they laugh back at people who think this way. Because they're going, you're just hoping. You're just hoping that something will kick. But the reality is, factories are being built, and technology is being, solved and accelerated. Now we have AI. Now we have bots. These things are moving forward. And yet the value of the stock and the company keeps falling. Tesla is a little bit weird because there's just so much mess going around with this, right? With Elon, things he's talking about. What's your comments on all that?
So there are, yesterday I saw someone on X tell me that the only reason Tesla is as high as it is because of people like me pumping the stock endlessly and telling people to buy. Now, I never tell people to buy. Famously, I don't do that. But and he's right, but other channels do, and they're big pump. Look, If YouTubers had the ability to move the stock, don't you think the 100 million views giving a glowing review to Cybertruck from CarWow, MKBHD, Carmudgeon, and Sandy Monroe, add those up, you're at 100 million across platforms. It didn't move the stock. So what does move the stock? Crazy things, little things, the freeze. One part of one city in one region of one country got a bunch of cars stranded because the drivers didn't understand best practices for charging in temperatures they've probably never driven in, because most people haven't, because these are extremes. That, I think, is why we're seeing a little negativity today. Some people are thinking, well, maybe this one little isolated thing means EVs aren't the future. Well, next week it's going to recover, maybe tomorrow, maybe later today. But these things have a big impact, even when they shouldn't, even when it doesn't make any sense at all. So that's why you have to zoom out. Like you were saying, the fundamentals remain the same. If you look at the company when it was at all-time highs, and I told you, look, we're a couple years from now, we're going to have 2 million deliveries. We're going to have the Cybertruck out with great reviews. We're going to have, here's our earnings, here's our revenue, here's our profit. You'd say, oh my gosh, I'm definitely going to buy today. And that would have been the wrong decision, because the stock market is fickle.
Okay. So yes, we cannot look at the daily news, but we can't help it. So these daily things happen, and then our emotions are affected. And then there's people like me, and I'm sure you're the same thing. We call ourselves long-term investors, which we really, somebody will say, what's your price target? People think that I have a price target, by the way. And some guy goes, you are so bullish. You're so crazy bullish. And I go, what do you mean? And I said, they go, well, your stock price. And I go, tell me what my price target is.
I'd love to know.
I actually don't give out stock price. And now if I'm pushed to the wall, somebody asks me, then I will throw something out. But my numbers are very reasonable. It's based on just the auto market. And I know other people say, well, if you believe bots and energy and all these things are going to be, why would you just base it on auto market? I agree with that. I just don't want to throw numbers out on this date. The stock's going to be at this point. I know it's a crapshoot, so I'm not going to do that. But it's funny that people think that I'm like so bullish for some reason, and I've never given a stock price. I don't do these $10,000 price by two, whatever. I do interviews of other people who say that. Doesn't mean
yes.
I believe that.
And you push back, and I appreciate that, because a lot of it's easy to get in a bubble and start a little cheer squad. But like you were saying, if you were to ask me, what will the stock price be if bots come out this year or next, and they deploy 100,000? The answer is, I don't know, man. There's way too many variables. And what if it's one more year and somebody else gets there first? Too many variables to know. All I know is the fundamentals look good. The roadmap looks amazing. Everything, we'd said on another show that hasn't aired yet, that we've already shot, that when I saw just auto, I was excited. And then they introduced Powerwalls, and I thought, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then they introduced Megapacks, and I was like, how did I not see this coming? I should have seen this and then AutoBidder, and then everything else they've done. And AutoBidder and Powerwall and Megapack are churning real money today in ways that if just the stationary storage business was spun off, it would be a multi-billion-dollar corporation with nothing but blue seas around it. It would have, a lot of growth opportunity, as we know, because there's a new factory coming online in Shanghai. The factory in Lathrop is ramping still, probably mostly ramped at this point, and we may see more megafactories announced.
So I think, let's go back to how you view Tesla as a company. And I think one of the reasons why people get very down and they get worried is because of people who focus on Tesla being an auto company, and they look at the margins and they see that there's depressed margins, and they're thinking there's no way the stock will rise because there's so many institutional investors, particularly, who just look at earnings per share and forward looking, and then they bring it back with discounted cash flow, and then that's what it is, right? What you and I do, and then people say that's hopium, the way we think of things, but it's not. The way I look at Tesla is that there's an auto business, but the auto business is in a mature segment. I'm trying to find this beautiful chart. I'm going to see if I can pull it out for folks. The auto business. And in the auto business, it's already mature, right? It's already profitable. It's no longer this startup thing that we had to fight through, that, the 2018 almost dying production hell. We're now profitable. We're selling. In fact, we're selling the best, most cars ever, more EVs and all that. But you're now basically can map it out, how fast and how slow, and earnings, and then competitors, are they finally coming, not coming? Okay, but it's a very, very simple business. If that's the case, that's what you're looking at, then that's what you're going to basically, every time there's a price cut, like you and I just did a show on this, earnings people like Gary Black will reduce the earnings. But that's not what Tesla is. That's where the disconnect is. Tesla is a company that has one auto business, but it has 4 other businesses that are in various stages of startup. And people go, well, I'm not going to give them any benefit for the stock on that because that's hopium, and these things might happen. But clearly, when you, everybody that I've interviewed, and I asked them what percentage of the Tesla stock price today at 220 is made up by the auto business and what percentage by the other businesses, and you're going to have varying answers. But inevitably, it's not just 100% auto, but they're not giving enough for these other businesses. And if you take these other startups and you pull them away and you had them as separate businesses on their own, just not even part of this business, hidden under there, they would be given significant stock price. I mean, what's the value of an AI company? What's the value of a robot AI company? What's the value of robotaxi? And that's what we're all calculating and adding to our thing. But you know what I mean? Like, that's the difference, is that people get caught up with trying to find out the earnings. Well, you can't do that when you're talking about startups. In that case, it is partly hopium, but it's like based on the progress of the company, progress of the product. That's what you're looking at right now. And if everything's looking forward, then it's very likely that they will get these future earnings that you're calculating.
So you just hit on something great. The fact that there's all these startups within Tesla, and Megapack used to be one of them. Normally, those are just money sinks that when you invest in a company like that, you look at it and say, I might just lose everything. If they run out of money before they get to market, it's over. But Tesla's been able to maintain strong balance sheet, strong cash reserves, strong positive cash flow, while funding all of these other endeavors. Any one of which could be, not any one of which, but several of which could be $1 trillion company by itself. If bots hold half the promise that the hyperbulls think, it's $1 trillion business. If Megapack lives up to its reasonable expectations, it's a $500 billion company. If autonomy and robotaxi live up to half their expectations, it's $1 trillion company. So but I will not put price targets on that, because apart from Megapack, which has a very clear roadmap, but it has a lot of competition coming, even from the people from whom they buy those individual battery cells. Until we get to see that, until we see revenue from those divisions, it's very hard, like you said, to know what the true value actually is.
I love that you said that, Brian. That's exactly the point, right? So now that you're looking at these startups, then you're saying what the potentials are. This is why it's funny, because these startups, each of them are going to be larger than the auto business. The energy is going to be the same as the current auto business that we have today. Within 4 or 5 years from now, just the energy alone will be already the same, the auto business that we have today. So you take the 220 and you double it if you want to. And that's clear. That's already happening. Auto energy is already with this higher margins in the auto. They're already 9% of the total sales that Tesla has. This isn't just small numbers anymore. We're getting into the big deal. Just energy. But then, like you said, people do these numbers, right? Robotaxi and bots, and it's just, it's through the roof, crazy. So okay, so what you and I are doing to assuage our fear and emotions is we're going, just wait in the future. Hope. How do you protect yourself from trying to fall into this trap of, oh my God, the stock was at 400 at one point. Now it's at 100. Now it's at 200.
Sure. So what I look at is what's changed. When it went from 400 to 100,
Nice.
what changed? Nothing changed. The execution improved. The competition did not arrive. The fundamentals remained as strong as ever, if not stronger. The cash pile continued to grow. The debts were paid down to nothing. The long-term debts, which were looming in 2019, were successfully converted to stocks rather than requiring a cash repayment. So what's changed? And now if we look at it today, what's changed? Does the car fail when it's negative 30 degrees? Sure. I mean, yes, if you're not prepared. In other countries, drivers are more prepared and it doesn't fail. Just like gasoline cars can fail in negative 30. It's extreme weather. I don't expect anyone to be ready for it. It's too far out there. So then what's going to cause it to fail? Is the competition coming? In the US, it definitely is not. They've scaled back their ambitions. In Europe, is the competition coming? Yeah, and the competition's doing a great job, but Tesla continues to expand their market share. In China, is the competition coming? Of course it is. It's coming in real strong, but Tesla's sales continue to grow because the whole market is expanding. We are not competing for EV market share. We're competing for automotive market share. And with all these looming by 2030, 2035, complete internal combustion engine bans, who is the best positioned to survive into that and prosper from this transition? And I'm pretty confident you and I have the same opinion who that might be.
Yeah, we do. That's the story we tell each other, right? And so I'm just trying to figure out because it's all true. Everything you just said is absolutely true. And you just have this, like you said, what you said just a few minutes ago was gold, right? Nothing has changed when the stock falls from 400 to 100. There are a lot of people who think that the stock price tells you the value of the company. And if the stock falls,
yeah,
right, they go, well, there's a marketplace, and that's the value of the company. And I don't see it that way, because as an investor, I see a stock that's really low, and I go, well, does that mean that everybody must know something? And I go, no, they don't know what I see, and I've been proven right. And Alexandra Mertz, if you go to her X account in the last several days, she's been posting this. She's been comparing what happened to Apple and what the institutional analyst like Sacconaghi has been saying about Apple. And everything that we're talking about today, it's like a complete echo of what happened to Apple. And I'm a long-term investor in Apple, and I went through that already, where there was people totally downplaying the phone, totally downplaying the App Store. Competition is going to wipe them out. Every single thing, same thing. Apple would launch something new, and they would just discount it. Stock fell by 50% one day. And so it's like even Apple, people forget today. And yet today they're the largest company in the world. And so there was a time when their stock was so low, people were so afraid of what's going to happen to them. And yet you just stick by the fact that you realize this is not a phone company. First of all, it wasn't a computer company. And then it was going to be a lifestyle company. They came out with their iPod, they came out with the phone. You realize that they're here to give you the whole entertainment package. And if you didn't see that ahead of time, then you missed the whole story of Apple. You just kept thinking they're a computer company. And that's what's happening today. People are saying Tesla is just a car company. And now the car company, like you just eloquently said, people are saying, well, it's not going to, it's slowing down growth. They've had to cut prices. Margin's going to fall. They're not going to be able to increase their sales. They're no longer a 50% growth that they used to be. And that's why the stock has fallen. That's not the way I look at it. And I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I have a totally different approach.
So the thing that Apple did that was unique and that scared a lot of those investors at the time is they were not afraid to disrupt themselves. Wait, you're going to make an iPod or a tablet, a laptop that's going to disrupt your desktop, a tablet that's going to disrupt your laptop, a iPhone that's going to kill your iPod. And they said, if we don't do it, someone else will. So let's Talk about Tesla. The Model 3 is going to kill the Model S. It didn't. The Model Y is going to kill the Model 3. It didn't. And soon we'll have a compact. Is that going to kill the Model 3? Maybe. But if it does, it just means that that car is going to be selling in such volume at such a level of popularity that it won't matter. And the objective is that the compact will be selling maybe an order of magnitude more than the Model 3. So there is, if you're not disrupting it, someone will. There's an uncertainty on the horizon about, in terms of politics. Hey, we got Emmett.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Great. So I was just saying that there's an uncertainty on the horizon in terms of politics because you never know what the next administration, the next Congress, the next Senate is going to feel. And I'm hopeful we can find politicians who are in support, not necessarily in support of the IRA as it stands today, but in support generally, support for getting permits expedited, support for leveling the playing field between fossil fuel subsidies and other things, leveling the playing field in terms of bringing a lot of this production back to our shores for a variety of reasons, including, avoiding disruptions in case of a pandemic or something like that. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good point. There's going to be, this 2024 is a big election year, and I think there's a lot of uncertainty about the elections this year and what policies may change or not change as a result of the election. So it's certainly a factor. It's just a big ball in the air, one of several balls being juggled right now by Tesla investors' confidence in the coming year, I would say.
Yeah.
So Emmett, thank you very much for joining us. I wanted to invite you because you are, one of the people that have been pretty well known in the Tesla investor community as somebody who kind of have a good feel of what's happening with the stock. What we've been talking about is the pain, the joy, and the hope of holding Tesla as a stock, right? Many of us are long-term investors, and for us, some of us, most of us, don't look at the daily stock price movement, right? And the stock, and specifically Tesla, very, very volatile. And so you can't help yourself with your emotions going up and down. But how do I, as a long-term investor, how do I just keep redirecting my vision, what I know for sure about the stock to keep my kind of emotions in stock in stock? So you famously made a good return in your Tesla investment. You're willing to take risks. Tell me a little bit more about how you see Tesla as a stock because of its volatility. And I think you both play both sides, right? You're long term, but you're also able to kind of manage and adjust to what you're expecting in the short term. Is that correct?
Yeah. I have a short term aggressive investing strategies I run as a segment of my wealth at this point, and I keep that very compartmentalized, and it hasn't been doing so well the last couple of years, as anyone who's bullish on Tesla can imagine, I'm sure. But the majority of my wealth is long-term Tesla shares, and I think it's tough because you got to really zoom out on the big picture, the decade, the 10 years. And from 2011 to 2013, it was a long kind of grind, but I knew at the time Tesla was like a 4 billion market cap. And I was like, should be like a much bigger, 10 times bigger market cap company. I'm going to keep investing and staying patient and study the company and the car and blah, blah, blah. And eventually they came to fruition in 2013, 2014. The stock got up to like a 50 billion market cap valuation. But then the next phase was like, okay, 50 billion, I think it should be like a 200 or 300 billion market cap because now they're getting ready to mass produce the Model 3. And so I kept a close eye on it, but it was a 5-year kind of drought for the stock from 2014 to 2019 for anyone who's followed it that long. And you had to be very patient and just, it was tough because it was the first round of like, it was like get rich quick from 2013 to 2014. Anyone who got in recent or who, you know, was part of that ride, it was like, oh wow, my investment accounts went up like 10x or more really quickly. You know, that's amazing. It's like a get rich quick feel. And then after a long, it was tough to be patient for 5 years plus after that. But then it happened again, right? 2019, 2021 was another like get rich quick kind of phase of Tesla for Tesla investors. And that get rich quick kind of momentum attracts a lot of attention, and you get a lot of new investors turned on to the idea of what Tesla is and bought into the vision, as well as, you know, some of them experienced the kind of get rich quick 10x multiple of Tesla stock's appreciation for that time and so forth. But now we're in this other phase again where for years it's kind of, you got to be patient, and if you believe that it's going to be another 10x multiple from 500 billion to 5 trillion market cap, which it very well could be, and that's what I'm studying carefully every day. You know, that'll, you know, then hopefully that will happen if and at some point there will probably be another get rich quick moment, and that might be 2025 or it might be 2028. We don't really know. But if we study it carefully and make sure Elon's happy and sticks around, and you know, that's what worries me yesterday, that, or 2 days ago with the note, you know, that was sort of like a risk as a long-term investor. There hasn't been many risks as a long-term investor, but I feel like that was the first legitimate risk I saw when Elon was talking to, you know, commenting on the compensation package and maybe not developing AI and robotics, you know, and he's being serious. I mean, of course the board should give him a comp package. We don't know the inner workings of the board these days. We don't know the, you know, the red tape they have to go through to do that, or the fear of looking bad in the media, giving them a, you know, $2 trillion comp package if it gets 10 trillion market cap or whatever it's going to be, you know. So that's a risk as a long-term investor to kind of keep a close eye on, I would say. And we're sort of in this holding phase until the next kind of zip up of the Tesla valuation, which might not be until full self-driving becomes like widely adopted, or until the humanoid robot starts getting mass produced. We don't really know when that next, you know, revaluation of Tesla will be to be multi-trillion market cap, I would say.
So Emmett, you were saying that you need to be patient because this is the way the stock works. It's always flat until sometime it pops up. And then to be patient, though, there's going to be ups and downs, as we said. Now, I guess you're able to pick which events are really, truly risks that you need to look at, and which events are just, you know, it's happening and it will get past this, and they're minor bumps in the road, and it won't really truly impact the fundamentals of the company, right? And so you just identified Elon. Clearly, everybody says the key man risk is an issue. What percentage of the stock do you think is associated with Elon? Dan Ives was just interviewed on CNBC, and he said 60 to 70% of the stock price associated with Elon. Most people I talk to, they think it's around 30%, which is what I believe. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there'd be a real initial hit. I don't know, could drop 50% relatively quickly and then rebound a certain amount. And, you know, in the next 5 years, you know, might be actually better for Tesla stock price, you know, like a Tim Cook type, you know, margins master, you know, kind of come in and get some public education going on to improve margins and all this stuff. But over the 10 or 20 year period, you definitely would rather have Elon there, you know, I think, as a long-term investor. So, I mean, if Elon did leave and announce it, it would be a lot of short-term volatility for sure. In the stock, and volatility, I mean like the stock would go down, you know, but it might bounce back kind of quickly, especially if margins start improving soon after. So that's my guess. Yeah.
Okay. So you have to be patient. So you're patient. And then, so you and Yashu from Hit That Bid YouTube, you also, Yashu, same thing, right? You and Emmett are about the same, right? You both have long-term investments, but you also will play the short terms up and down. So how do you, what we're talking about today is the pain, the joy, and the hope of holding the Tesla stock. It's painful for many people. Yeah. What's your thoughts?
Well, first of all, hi guys, it's been a while.
Hey Yashu.
I hope everyone's doing well. It's been a crazy week, right? So I was at a lunch meeting. I tweeted that out, and then I come back to my phone, and it's like a million notifications, which only kind of means one thing. And it wasn't just like a little slight notification. It was like a 3-paragraph reply, and then another follow-up thread. So I've kind of been on SOS mode a little bit this week. I actually
Yeah.
turned off my phone for a little bit, but I think it's great that we actually got an answer from Elon. And I don't want to
Yes.
rehash a lot of the stuff that you guys have already talked about, but hearing where he's coming from, I think candidly, of course, it's not the best news that Elon is looking at this almost bearishly a little bit and saying like, well, I don't have control. I'm not really incentivized to build more in here if I don't get it. But at the same time, you'd rather know the truth. And sometimes the truth hurts in the short term. And what's important, what I think the clarification that was important by Elon was that he didn't want more money. It was the voting power and the control on the AI side. And so as a shareholder, a long-term shareholder, you all I have to do is just look at that and go, okay, obviously, I mean, maybe this is just my optimistic side speaking, but I mean, if I'm Elon and I think Tesla's about to take another step change up in valuation from FSD or bots in the short term, whatever it might be, if FSD is close, like everyone thinks it is internally on the Tesla team, I mean, would that not be the time to push for and really have the public outcry of a new compensation plan prior to that? I mean, if FSD launches and then Elon wants a comp plan, maybe a lot of that's already priced in, and maybe that conversation dies a little bit. So, maybe again, that's maybe my optimistic side speaking, but I think it's important that Elon sticks around. I know, Emmett, I agree with you. It could be the Tim Cook moment for Tesla, but Elon to me is just like is he's the straw that stirs the drink. And at the end of the day, I think a lot of you guys have invested into Tesla because of Elon, and I think a lot of us Tesla bulls have. So losing him would not be good. Tesla would still do fine. I think the auto business would run fine. I think FSD is on track with the team that they have. But sometimes you need that guy at the helm to really push forward on timeline. And Elon gets made fun of timeline a lot, but I mean, at the end of the day, like look at the auto industry and how slow they've been to electrify. It takes like a Steve Jobs. I mean, there's all those stories of Steve Jobs really just being kind of a really mean manager, but really getting the most out of people in the long haul for society. So, Tesla's a stock where I think you look at it right now, you go, okay, $700-800 billion valuation. If Elon left, I agree. I think it'd be very volatile. It'd probably lose a lot of its valuation today. I think a lot of people, even on Wall Street, don't want to admit it, but they're invested in Tesla because they know that you don't really want to fight Elon. And, it would suck in the short term for sure.
So a question I would have for both Emmett and Yashu is, and I think we'll start with Emmett, is what do you tell people who are getting nervous, who are saying, oh no, it dropped a little today or a lot this week? What do you tell them to talk them back down from the ledge, I guess?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, on a day like today, you got to look at the macro market and, the overall, I think the NASDAQ was down close to 1% or over 1% this morning. It's recovered a little bit. So, I mean, on a day like today, Tesla going down 2% when the NASDAQ's down 1%, that's just normal for Tesla. Typically when the Nasdaq's up 1%, Tesla can be up 2%. You think so. The beta is pretty strong for Tesla typically, but when the rest of the market's doing well and Tesla's going down, that's when I get most nervous. That's when I'm like, all right, what's changing in investors' perspectives here? Are there some institutions trying to sell? Because institutions ultimately drive the stock price more than us, right? I mean, a bunch of us combined selling is not even equal to like one of the institutions deciding to sell. So. You got to wonder what's making portfolio managers, change their weighting of Tesla in their portfolios, or what's causing some new hedge funds to short Tesla or what have you. And, Elon being divisive and, his freedom of speech push. I love that for society. It's great. I'm so torn because I really like what he's done buying X and helping freedom of speech. And I think that's really good for society, but it's, no one's going to lie. That's hurt Tesla's, valuation tremendously, not just him selling Tesla shares, but just the perception of what percentage of portfolio managers, if Elon never did anything, kept his mouth shut and was just focused on Tesla, what percentage of portfolio managers would be invested in Tesla that are not right now, right? So many people kind of just stay away from it. They're like, oh, that's too risky of a guy, key man risk, blah, blah, blah. So that's you have to swallow that pill. And you know, the good news is, how much worse can that skepticism get? Or you know, how much worse, how much bigger of a grave can Elon dig for himself in controversy, right? I mean, it's already accepted, widely accepted, I would say. And it should improve from here. That's, you know, there should be a lot of room for improvement as, you know, the elections. But this is a 2024 is a US election year, and it could get quite volatile for X and Elon in particular. And so it's going to be it could be a very rough year. So you know, when I see days like today, I have to be ready. Like, hey, Tesla, I have to you know, be ready to lose a lot. You know, see my long-term holdings, you know, on paper go down 50% potentially this year. You know, that's not out of the question in my mind, and I would assign that a much higher probability than most people I see on, you know, Tesla Twitterverse or Xverse. You know, well, sometimes I tune into the YouTube discussions you guys have, or the spaces, and too many people have rose-colored glasses on. You know, this stock could get cut in half easily this year, like much higher percentage. I was on some space with, like, I was listening to Gary Black and talking to Tesla Boomer Mama and some other people about their prediction for the Tesla stock price. Everyone's like 300, 350, 400. I was like, what, are you guys crazy? This thing's gonna go to like 150 probably, you know? So, I mean, long term, I think it's going way up. But short term, I think it's like 50-50. This thing could go down to $100, $150 again, or it could go back up to 300. It's like 50-50. You know, you just have to be ready as a long-term investor, and know that, like, hey, I committed to this, and I'm waiting for 2025 and beyond, because that's going to be, I think, the good years for the
So
stock.
is that your date? Because you know, people are getting very upset. Others that keep saying, "I'm a long-term investor. Just wait till 2030."
Well, I think 2030 for sure, but I think the realistic chance for
Yeah,
the stock to really pop is 2025, because that's when the financials will show Cybertruck margins improving, and you know, I think the full self-driving should be more widely adopted by then. Like, I think it'll be this year, it'll be you know, released in China, which is a huge deal. There's like 1 or 2 million Teslas in China or something like that, waiting just to potentially add FSD, right? I mean, so there's a lot of good things to look forward to for 2025 in my mind. You know, like this year, Megapack is sort of an unknown. Is it really ramping up fast enough or not? I don't know. But by 2025, I would think we'll know, because the Shanghai Megapack factory, Tesla China, is what saves Tesla's valuation ultimately. It has been, and it will be again. And so when the Megapack factory in Shanghai gets done, you know, they know how to produce things. In America, we're lazy, we're red tape. Compared to China, we're sissies, you know. So Tesla China is probably going to save Tesla's market cap again in 2025, is my opinion.
What about you,
Yeah.
Yashu?
I look, Tesla went up 150% in 2023. If it falls half, if it gets cut in half, that's 75% off of that, right? So everything is in perspective, everything is relative, and that's why I guess Emmett's prediction of 50%, it's not like it's unheard of. I mean, we were there 13 months ago, right, at the $100-ish mark. So, you know, I think that I would be very surprised if Tesla in an individual stock performance hit that, and everything else was relatively fine. If that's in that scenario that happens, macro would really have to be crushed. Like, we're talking like a 20% dip in the NASDAQ sort of event. I mean, which could happen, because everyone, I mean, is talking about interest rates getting cut, which they probably will, to be fair. But remember, interest rates get cut for a reason. They don't just get cut because the stock market's doing great, housing is doing great, jobs are great. They get cut because inflation, because we might be you know, approaching a deflation, maybe even disinflation in some sectors. Housing market might really be lagging at some points. Jobs might be getting cut left, right, and center. That's why interest rates get cut, is to stimulate the economy. So that precedes that something must be wrong with the economy in the first place. So that aside, you know, you talk about Tesla and Elon and this year. I think it's also important to just distinguish incentives a little bit for Elon. Elon is almost, it's a true dichotomy. Elon has X on one side, where it's very negative cash flow, having a hard time keeping advertisers on board, really sucking money right now. whatever metric you put it, recently on X, actually, they started to monetize with Google AdSense ads. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with that, but X is really resorting to me, what it looks like, kind of last ditch efforts to make sure some money comes in, because in the whole of advertisers, all those advertisers that boycott, is a big gaping hole for cash flow. So Elon almost has this incentive to stir up X a little bit, right? Post controversial stuff, because he has 170 million X followers. When he posts, there's probably a one-to-one correlation on all the traffic and all the money that comes in. So Elon recognizes this. He's not a dumb guy. He knows what's happening. So when he tweets controversial things, yes, he probably means it, but he probably does it also at the frequency that he needs to make sure that cash flow also comes in for X. So that's one side of the dichotomy. The other side is, I mean, as Tesla investors, selfishly, we could say, man, every time Elon tweets something really politically sensitive or polarizing, that's just, easy, fuel to the fire for mainstream media. They can run with any narrative on Tesla on that. So it's almost like this teeter-totter effect of, like, you can kind of serve one master only, right, at one time. So it's like, okay, if Elon is controversial in X, he gets a lot of impressions, lots more money for X, but at the same time, it could hurt Tesla. So it's a very interesting position we find ourselves in, or Elon finds himself in, to really be exact. So I think it's super cool, though, that we get to witness. I mean, this is unprecedented. I don't think Steve Jobs would have found himself in this position, or insert any other executive. Elon is very unique in even wanting to take on these two almost conflicting challenges at the same time. So, but to answer your question about 2024 and the stock and what to tell people, I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, we have to know why we are in stocks that we're in. I mean, no one should be able to convince you to buy or sell anything. I mean, stocks go down, stocks go up. I mean, news really dictates the stuff in the short term. And, Tesla stock is not a stock that I think people that have, an easy time or are squeamish should step into. I mean, quite honestly, we've seen it last year. So the last thing I do, personally speaking, guys, is, like, I never tell any of my friends anymore to even look at Tesla stock or, talk Tesla stock with me, because, I had one buddy that I was like, check out Tesla stock, Berlin's getting off the ground soon. And then Tesla stock dips to 100, and no one really knows why they're in it in the first place. And I think what's important is that, when you tell people what to do with stocks, it's like, if they win, they're the genius. If they lose, it's all your fault. So it's really a lose-lose situation. So anyone watching this needs to reevaluate and go, okay, maybe I should lower my position sizing in Tesla, or my percentage, or my, whatever. But at the end of the day, I mean, you have to be comfortable and be able to sleep at night. And I prioritize that more than anything.
So is it worth it, guys? Tesla, I look at it as, it is my view, okay? I look at all the companies out there, and I'm going, where do I put my money? And I chose a company like Apple, right? You choose companies that you think is going to be innovation engines, that's going to basically win and have a huge market ahead of them, like massive market changes. That's what you're looking for, right? I made a mistake. I invested some in Amazon. I held it since its IPO, so I did well, but I didn't put a lot of money in it because I was worried about the PE ratio was high. They kept investing money, right? And losses for many years. I didn't invest in Google. I thought maybe that they were going to have some sort of lawsuit that's going to prevent them from doing these ads that they do. So I made those mistakes. But I looked at companies that I think are very innovative as a company. And so that's where I am doing it with Tesla. I see them as an innovation engine. I see that they're able to deliver products, and the business is strong with good balance sheet. That, to me, is enough for me to hold and just know that this will all, they've been proving it for the last 10 years, right? They'll always produce a product. The product succeeds in the market. They produce the next one. It's delayed. I have to be patient, but then it does come around. Is that enough for me to think of things? Or should I be going, oh my God, Tesla is so volatile. This is just not the stock for me, regardless. Like, I actually view Tesla as a once in a generation company. Like, it's only one of these out of 10 years that you can find something like this.
Herbert, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So you just cited all your experience with Amazon, Google, Apple, holding those companies, and to my knowledge, there's been nothing close to the social media, crowdsourced like the time, cheerleading that there is with Tesla
Yeah.
for those
Yeah.
stocks, or research, crowdsourced research even, but, we are sort of, you have to know that we're all sort of biased together in our own little echo chamber. We try to look at alternative perspectives, some people successfully, some people don't want to even look at alternative perspectives. Everyone's different, but, there's no denying this is a tremendous, community of Tesla retail investors. We all have our own specialties. We crowdsource it, and it's great. But do you think without that, can you imagine a place where that did not exist? If Twitter and all this online community Tesla
sure.
did not exist, would you still be as
Yeah.
emphatically interested in Tesla as you are now? Do you think? I mean, can you be
Well,
honest with yourself? Yeah.
That's what I did with Apple. I mean, I've been in long-term, decades holding Apple and just ignoring the quarterly. I just look and I watch everything.
But would you be like that with Tesla?
Yes.
Without that,
yeah. In fact, I was just saying earlier in this thing, there's actually a detriment sometimes because we get sucked into the daily crisis of the day when really what you just do is pull back and go, this is a great company, got innovation, great products, great leader, great balance sheet, and then just watch its product develop and the stock will follow, right? It's like sometimes I get pulled into this and think it's too much. But
so what I would say about that is the difference between Tesla and other companies I've seen, not just in this space, but in any space, is they have a history of doing things that are impossible. You cannot start a car company. You cannot switch from gliders to making your own. You cannot build your own battery factory. Why would you? You can't make the Model 3. And then we're at where we are now, which is you can't sell these cars at these prices and have a positive margin, but apparently you can. So in all the ways that they shouldn't be able to succeed, they've found ways to do it and do it very well. And there's a secret sauce there. And that's what's giving me confidence beyond the 10-year horizon. For the 10-year horizon, it's still ramping the products that we already know about. But there's going to be a lot of new things, the bots, the autonomy, the robotaxi, all of those. But in the meantime, the execution remains better than I can find at other companies. I don't do the kind of research that Emmett does. I am envious of your ability to actually get that deep on as many things as you do. But I'm confident if I tried to do that, I would not have the headspace to get it all processed. And that's why so many of the Tesla analysts that you'll find on YouTube, on X, that's why we beat Wall Street consistently, is because a lot of those analysts will have 30, 40, 50 companies that they're supposed to be covering, and they do not have the skill or capacity to cover that many, and that's why our numbers wind up better. And that's why I have confidence. I invested in 2019 in the dip because I saw something that those people didn't. And I am still invested today because I still see something that they apparently don't.
Honestly, and to your question, I look at this, right? And it's like, okay, if the community doesn't exist, is Tesla as big as it is today? And I think retail investor base, as big as it is for Tesla in percentage, I don't think makes even a dent into a large portion of the valuation. I mean, if you look at high frequency trading firms that like to, make their daily income in Tesla options, if you look at the portfolio managers, the long-term investors like Ron Barron, and more of the sneaky ones as well, and the institutional BlackRock types, Fidelity types. I look at the community that we have and I go, this is the free market saying, look, there's something here that is more interesting than, can you imagine if Herbert was running, no offense, like a NVIDIA channel? Like, I don't think it'd be close to as interesting. And arguably NVIDIA is as cool as, you can get in the AI space right now and hitting all-time highs. I don't see an NVIDIA community base like we have in Tesla. So I look at this as like a free market signal of, there's something here more than just numbers that's bigger collectively. And personally speaking, I think it's because Tesla is so multifaceted, and it's like if you threw a reality TV show on a world-class company, that's kind of what Tesla is in a nutshell.
Yeah, great points. And
so what about you? What's your answer to that? Your own question, Emmett?
Yeah, my answer is I'm not sure. Like, this is a global phenomena that is hard to explain, the rise of the Tesla retail investor. I'm sure there'll be movies about it in the future. And I think I try to think probabilistically on everything. Like, it's the future is always uncertain in my mind. So I have to understand, like, okay, I think Tesla will probably be, multi-trillion market cap company by 2030. But there's also these other range of outcomes that could happen. And as we get closer to the future, the other range of outcomes become more clear, whether they are likely or not, or what I think is most probable is even more probable or not, right? So that's sort of how I try to think about the future with Tesla. And I have to ask myself to make sure I'm doing that is I try to ask myself, for example, like, under what conditions, what would change for me to change my mind on the probable future of Tesla being not good, of the Tesla investment?
Mhm,
What realistically
mhm.
could change? So I like to ask all you guys, like, can you name something that's somewhat realistic that could happen that would make you change your mind on Tesla to sell the stock? For me, I'll go first. I would say one hypothetical, somewhat I could see potentially happening. I don't know if it's like a 5% or 20% or 1% probably, but it seems like it's a realistic possible outcome. Is if Elon Musk, let's say he just feels a higher calling with ending the woke culture and a political crisis in the U.S. with the borders and the budget, out of control and all that. And let's see, he just feels a higher calling and he's called into work in the cabinet of the next administration to, really change things, and then he leaves Tesla officially to work on that stuff. And maybe he even creates an AI robotics somehow outside of Tesla, maybe through government or just some other entity or something like that. So if all that stuff happens and he puts like JB Straubel in charge, and I like JB Straubel, but I don't think he's a manager of a company. I don't think he could never get the Gigafactory Nevada was almost an impossible task, but it took years. He was like in charge of that, and that didn't really go that well. It took so long to just ramp up. So I'm not sure he would not be a Tim Cook in my mind. Like, he's a very smart person, but as a manager of resources, I'm not sure. So for example, like, let's say JB Straubel took over, I'd be like, and Tesla valuation was already like where it is now, and the margins were like 15% and not looking great, and the demand and FSD is still, I would think about selling my stock at that point, to be honest. So that's a realistic possibility. Whether it's 1% or 10% in the next year happening, I think it's a possibility I consider. And if it looks like that's more likely to happen as time goes on, I have to think harder about that position. Will I sell the stock? What else has to happen for me to sell my stock if that comes about? So that's my example of something that would make me sell the stock. What about you guys? Let's go to Yashu first, maybe, or Herbert. You
Okay.
you want to
No,
say
no, go
something,
ahead.
maybe? Okay, Yashu first. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean that's a huge problem, that there's no second in command to Elon, and which is why I think the solution of him having more power is easier solved than him getting more shares without major dilution. So I agree. I think, again, Elon is the straw that stirs the drink. If Elon steps away from Tesla, will Tesla be fine? Yeah, probably. But is Tesla going to be a moonshot without Elon? That is in major question mode for me, because if you look at moonshot to happen, FSD and bot, right? I mean, more so FSD. And if Elon leaves and without FSD launched, I mean, that's I mean, doesn't get more. You'd really have to argue. You'd really have to twist your arm sideways to argue that that's somehow good for FSD. So I think FSD is the lever. If FSD is in question at all, I'm happy to wait on FSD in terms of timeline, because I know good things take time, and FSD is such a step change for Tesla that even if we waited 2 or 3 extra years, 5 years, whatever it might be, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, FSD needs to happen. But if anything puts that really into like existential risk, I mean, then you start looking at, okay, what other stocks take over in terms of Tesla for that? Because you have to be honest with yourself and say, what other opportunities are there out there more than Tesla? And with FSD, it's hard to find. With bot, hard to find. But if you take FSD out of the equation, then you start questioning that. I think another factor is probably going to be talent. If Elon leaves, and that aside, even if Elon leaves and Elon starts recruiting all of the world talent to his XAI project or X project. I mean, it leaves a huge gaping hole for Tesla to be able to recruit, world-class engineers. And I don't think people look at this metric enough, but the biggest leading indicator for a company's success is the talent that they can recruit, and Elon is a big portion of that. And so, if talent starts to drop off, if interest in Tesla starts to drop off, then I mean, look at GM. No offense to anyone who works at GM, but you see those events that they run. It's just not even comparable. So, I think Elon is the straw that stirs the drinks for so many reasons.
Okay, I think that's a fantastic question, Emma. Thank you for doing that, because I was actually thinking the same thing, that you were going to ask this question. So it depends, right? So you're absolutely correct about Elon, but when? If it happened today, I would probably pare back my investment in Tesla, but I still believe, even happened today, Tesla stock will still double from where it is today, if just things remain the way it is. But I'm not here to just double my stock. The reason why I'm investing in Tesla is I'm looking for an opportunity that gets me 10x, 20x. And it all depends on your investment situation that you're at, that you're looking for. This will change as I get, as years go on from my situation in life. Right now, I'm looking for a stock that's going to 10x or 20x. If something happened to Elon this year, it'll be a 2x. Okay, I might put some money in. If it happens next year or 2 years from now, at that point, it might still be a 10xer, because at that point, bot might already be well ahead of its game. It doesn't matter if he's there or not already. The bot's going to sell. There's this interview I did with Chris Camillo, and his calculation showed that if you can just sell 1.5 million bots, and an 80 PE ratio, you can get the company to be at $10 trillion already. So even if Elon leaves a year, 2 years from now, whatever point it is where the bot's already established, I would still invest. But I love what Yashu said, which is what Elon is not just the innovation guy. He's critical. He's absolutely critical to the whole thing. But it's the company, and the company's culture will change, and then they can't become an innovation engine anymore. They can't get things done on time, because Elon's special. He's not just the guy that gives you the vision. He's actually the guy that makes the day-to-day clock tick, and he makes the factories run. I mean, he is amazing that way. He's like, you can never find that kind of person. He's a once in a I think personally, he's one of the most important people ever in terms of business, better than Steve Jobs and others. But just like Tim Cook did when he took over that company, he took it from a $500 billion company to a $2.53 trillion company. He didn't innovate anything, but he took it. Now if you throw out the JB Straubel, okay, yeah, he's not the Tim Cook. We need to find somebody that's going to be able to do the Tim Cook model. But that is the one thing. You're right. I can't think of anything else that could happen, because the beautiful thing about Tesla is that it's in so many businesses. Let's say that something happened with regulations and government says you cannot sell energy anymore. You can't do it, and we prefer you do oil. Okay, so energy business goes away, but the Tesla has 5 other businesses working on. You know what I mean? Like FSD, there's regulations. It killed too many humans, and it'll never happen. We'll never make that happen in the world. That's okay. There's many businesses. So I still think of Tesla as so many amazing businesses that I can't think of another company. The only one I will say is NVIDIA. NVIDIA at the CES announcement that they're not only selling chips, they're now partnered with robots, 12 robot companies. They've got this initiative with genomics and biotech. They've got an initiative with robotaxi as well. They're truly trying to become NVIDIA's trying to become Tesla before Tesla can become NVIDIA. But regardless, both companies will succeed. So there's only a few companies that can really put their hands in these places, like Google and others that are interesting. So that's, I don't know if that answered your question, but that's the way I'm looking at it. It's like, yeah, it's still going to succeed regardless.
Mm-hmm. So the way I'm looking at it is, so if Elon were to announce today a departure, that would make me seriously consider scaling back, but not probably more than 20-30% of my holdings, but with a plan to immediately get it back in once I think the dip is done. Because whether I hold it or whether I get back in, I don't have to get the bottom of the market to get more shares than I already had. But that would just be gambling in my view. But that would definitely be a consideration I'd need to make. In terms of succession, I think Tom Zhu, the Magi of Shanghai, would be well equipped, well suited to take the company and execute on the existing roadmap. And I think hopefully the board of directors and other executives would be able to make the next version of the roadmap that follows the same philosophy. In terms of leaving to do something else, he's already created XAI separately. And it wasn't because of a lack of ownership. The reason he stated was there are people who just don't want to work at Tesla. And the people he was drawing in were looking at these beautiful stock options that could 10x, 100x in ways that they couldn't 10x or 100x at Tesla. So for me, what would definitely make me consider selling? Dividends. Once you're printing dividends, you're not a growth company.
Don't give me money. Uh-oh. Come on, buddy.
No. If you need that, they will get to a point where they've got so much money they don't know what to do with it.
What about share buybacks? What about that?
So if you've got so much money that you can't possibly spend it, I'd prefer buybacks over dividends. That would not make me question the company unless they, if the pile of cash is so insurmountable that you can't imagine what to spend it on, buy it back. But until then, please don't. That would give me pause. That would give me pause for sure. Sorry, Gary.
Interesting. So, well, thanks for all your answers. Yeah. I mean, I think there's lots of other possible things we should try to, like, just as what makes me more convicted, you asked earlier on, like, how do you not be nervous of this stuff? How do you kind of keep, holding through nervous times? And for me, I have to continuously come up with these types of scenarios in my mind. So I feel like I've covered all the bases. Because I know there's a lot of things I don't think about, and I need to make sure I'm thinking about all the possibilities. Like Tesla China, is there something there that could happen that could ruin Tesla? Like maybe the Chinese government takes over, just some crazy economic war between the US and China, and Tesla's caught in the crossfire along with Apple or whoever else too, or maybe, Elon goes a little nutty and decides like, hey, I'm just going to cut margins to zero and sell these cars at a loss because we can produce 2 million a year now and there's not enough demand, but I'm just going to sell them at a loss because I'm convinced FSD is around the corner, and it's still not around the corner. So there's lots of other potential scenarios I have to continuously think about in my head to help me stay convicted, because then I feel like I've researched it enough. If I'm putting my head in the sand and all the negative scenarios, then I know, like, I could be missing something, could be slapped over the head with something before I know it, So as long as I'm thinking about all the negative scenarios in a weird way, that makes me more convicted, if that makes sense.
I've got a question for you, Emmett. And then I think, Yashu, you could actually answer this too, because of your conversation with Elon here. There's a conspiracy theory. There's a theory that Elon purposely does not want the stock to go up for a variety of reasons. But one is, once I get my compensation plan, then I'm going to go do it. Why would I want the stock to go up now? And so is there any possibility that that is new? I mean, we have seen Elon over the years, he acts like as if he doesn't care about the Tesla stock. Although he did say at one point, I really do love my retail investors, I'll take care of you. But his actions and his words afterwards have all been, who cares? The stock is too high, whatever. He doesn't give a crap about it. What do you think, Emmett, first? And then I want to hear Yashu too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I want to hear Yashu's point of view too, but I'll be quick. So I honestly think Elon doesn't care about the stock price itself, because he knows they never have to raise capital again. And so he just knows the stock will get to wherever it gets to in the end. So I that's my position on what Elon thinks, most likely. I could be wrong. I'm always looking for signal that could be wrong. And potentially this comment about trying to get another comp package, to get more voting, and, is possible signal to say, maybe I'm wrong about thinking that way. Maybe he just doesn't care because he doesn't feel like he's incentivized enough. But then you have to trust him at his word that the reason he's not incentivized is because he's just uncomfortable creating this potential Frankenstein force of humanoid robots driven by AI that he loses control over or influence over, and it ruins the world. And he created the Terminator, Endgame, So I feel like most likely that's what he's worried about, and he kind of explained it that way. So I understand that, and we do need to figure out how to give him more influence on the company, I think. Anyway, sorry, Yashu, you go.
No, I actually agree with that. What I would add for context is, I don't know why, but I'll share this. I was in Rome this summer, or for our honeymoon in September, and we were doing a tour of the Roman Forum, right? And we're getting a tour done of Augustus and Hadrian and Julius Caesar's house, and you know. I had this like almost like it was kind of weird, right? It's like, why are you even thinking about this on this tour? But I'm like, this is kind of probably how, like, the amount of power that these emperors had is probably how Elon feels a lot of the time. He's got the most cash in the bank. His net worth is one of the top. He owns the top companies. He really, I mean, he is probably more powerful than a lot of emperors were, right? With his amount of resources. So when he says stuff like he wants to save free speech, if I say that, I'm a nut job. But he has the resources and the power and the forward-looking nature to be like, in 2,000 years, I want them to talk about how I did this. I think he looks at his legacy that way. And it sounds pie in the sky, but I just had this epiphany when I was there because I was like, this is how he sees it. He sees it 200, 300, 500, 1,000 years from today as a legacy marker for him to say he had the resources that anyone in the world would die for. Number one in the world in terms of net worth for a long time. What did he do with his money? Well, he tried to save free speech, or he tried to save democracy. He looks at it like that way. And so, to your point of, does Elon say, you know what, why would I want to push for this before I get my comp plan? He's only human. So I think any human rationally would be like, wait, I don't have a comp plan. If Tesla 10X is today, hypothetical, I don't get any juice from that squeeze, right? But I don't think he looks at it from a enriching himself perspective. I do actually believe it when he says, I believe it when I say that my hypothesis is he looks at it from a, well, if I can extract that amount of value and then dictate with those resources what I want to accomplish, why would I not wait for that comp plan before that big release of Tesla Boss or FSD or whatever? And to be fair, he almost said as much, right? In the tweet, he said he is waiting for, or the board is waiting for, the Delaware compensation plan ruling judgment before they discuss compensation plan. I think if you ask anyone on the inside if they think that this ruling would have already come down, I think the answer is yes. So I think Elon's frustrated with the delay that's gone on. Does he artificially want to push down Tesla stock? Probably not, but I just feel like he doesn't have a filter, whereas a few years ago when a lot of the comp plans or tranches weren't triggered, maybe he would have a little bit more of a filter because he wants to hit those goals for Tesla stock, and he would not put that in jeopardy. But today, what's the incentive for him to have a filter if it means Tesla stock goes down? Does it really matter? I mean, he owns 411 million shares already. So I think, to answer your question in a long-winded way, does he probably want the compensation plan before Tesla 10Xs? Of course. I mean, any human would. It's only rational. But do I think he looks at it diabolically? No.
You just confused me so much, Yashu, because the way you started this and the way you ended it were completely opposite of what you were saying. So I completely agree with you, right? It's not about the stock. He doesn't care about that. He's got this big visions and goals and mission that's beyond any of us, right? Extension of life, improvement of life, all these things. Then why would he care about the stock price going up or down? He's not. He really, truly is. Well, I see it the opposite, right? I go, look at his sentence. He says that, robotics AI, I'm now afraid that it's going to be out of my control. I need to prepare today to make sure that I have influence on this, because he actually sees the progress is happening. It's happening in front of our eyes, guys. And so he sees that. So he's now saying, I need to have influence. That's what's driving him, not, I better get my comp plan before I'm going to really push hard. I don't think so.
Yeah, and to that point, he said that he's not negotiating with the board on the comp plan until this particular case, Delaware case, is settled, which was held in 2022. And we're over a whole calendar year later, and it's still no settlement or decision or something. Have we talked to anyone who knows how long this could it go on for 5 years? I mean, how do we know? That's a real risk then, right? If it's going on indefinitely, and this technology is advancing and he can't do a comp and his hands are tied behind his back to negotiate a comp plan, then that's a real risk too. That's a possible situation that we have to monitor as Tesla shareholders. If this court case is just indefinitely held up by shorts or whatever, appealing some decision and he can't for whatever reason negotiate a new comp plan until it's figured out, then that's a real risk too, right? I mean, we should be investigating We should be
We
talking
should,
to the
yeah.
Chancellor Court of Delaware to say, like, hey, when is this expected to come down? It's been over a year. Is it going to be another year? Is it going to be next month? Is it going to be 5 years from now? Like, what's the determining factors here? You know?
So I wanted to address the conspiracy theory because I spend a lot of time looking at conspiracy theories because most of them don't make sense. And in the case of this one, it sounds good. He's pushing down the stock price with unpopular, polarizing comments just so that he can drive it back up. I don't think that's the case. I think the simple answer is it was high enough that he said, look, I don't care what today's stock value is. It doesn't matter to me. However, if his new compensation plan is tied to the market cap, he may begin to care once again. And it would be fascinating to see him try to gamify his reputation to get all that karma back that he squandered over the last 5 years, going from being the darling of social media to being what half of social media considers the worst thing and half considers pretty amazing. You can do great things with 50% support, but like Emmett was saying earlier, if a fund manager is scared of the volatility of the key man, it can cause hesitation on buying blocks so large that they wouldn't that they would make the rest of us look like the peanuts that we have.
Mm-hmm. And I think the bigger risk is not even does this get delayed? What if the judge rules that this compensation plan is invalid? And like you talk about that risk. I don't want to.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to open the rabbit hole. So what if the judge says that 2018 comp plan is actually invalid? And guess what? That obviously squanders any future talk of a massive compensation plan like this. But maybe is there retro pay? Is there is there something where Elon has to give back? Like, I don't know. I don't want to. I'm not an expert in this, so I won't talk about it too much. But it does open that up, right? Yeah, but I mean,
what an
I think
irony,
we could probably
right?
go on for it.
Yeah.
His irony, because this lawsuit was made by a guy with 8 shares.
Yeah.
Well, that's like in the yearly AGM. It's the people that have very little power but are propped up by these bad actors, as Elon would say, or that are just there for show, right? But really, who's the puppet's master is really the question.
Yep.
All right. Well, so here's again, I'm being maybe too rose-colored glasses, but Elon wants to be in Tesla because Tesla is now doing robots. It's doing AI. He sees a path for robotic AI.
It's a conglomerate of startups.
The tremendous impact that Tesla can now do for humanity is it's mind-boggling what robots can do. Robots with brains can do for humanity, right? It truly is going to take. He's already talking about UBI. It's hopefully we get to utopia, right? Because there could be all sorts of talking about probabilities. I meant there's all sorts of probabilities of what can happen where this goes completely wrong. And that's why he needs to stay at the helm. I think he made that statement, didn't he, about a year ago? In one of the earnings, he said that I need to stay here to make sure that robot AI becomes a thing. Remember that? He made that statement.
Yeah.
I want to shepherd it along. So there is no other company that he wants to be in. I mean, I think he's more interested in robotic AI than he would be with just AGI. And he's already been saying that everything he's doing is actually AGI. And he believes that vision, reality, is the way to get AGI versus some others who think that just a large language model can get you to AGI. So anyways, I mean, I'm just saying that I think he's pumped. This thing is going to go, and that's why he's now thinking about how do I protect it and influence it. That's where his mind is.
Yeah, it's just that's most likely. Hopefully, that's the optimistic view. And but regardless, there's lots of possibilities here we've been talking about. So it just creates more uncertainty, more awareness of the uncertainty until the new comp package is in place, right? So.
Right.
We have this window of time of uncertainty, added uncertainty that makes investors nervous, and hopefully the institutional investors don't get too nervous by this, and because that's what would move the stock the most, right? And then you have the macro market on top of it, like Yashu was saying, hinting at, like, are we going into a recession or not? and so the macro market could be a rough patch this year too. We don't really know. Could be good too. Maybe the macro market rallies again, and hopefully Tesla rallies along with it. If so, but there's just a lot of uncertainty this year for Tesla. I feel like so it's
Okay.
a nervous time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Emmett and Yashu, for joining Brian and me for the show. I tell you, we were talking about Tesla stock, right? There's tremendous amount of pain, there's tremendous amount of joy, and tremendous amount of hope. And the way you position it today, Emmett, which I really appreciate everything you said today. But so it's all in probabilities. So as an investor, you should think about all these probability of outcomes, and then just remind yourself, right? These day-to-day movements, are they important? Maybe one of them, like maybe this recent tweet by Elon, that could be an important one. But the rest of them are, it's painful for the day, painful for the month, but not painful for the trajectory of this company. Ignore it, move on, adjust it, adjust your probabilities. Thank you for framing it that way, Emmett. I appreciate you. And then Yashu, you had a long conversation with, you are part of history at this point. You were the one that got him to say these things, which were very impactful. And then you had a conversation. I'm not blaming you. I know some people, saying some weird thing, but I mean, it's a conversation. Why is it funny?
I had a lot of funny messages, but no, you're right. I don't even know how I got myself into this. Sometimes you just wake up and you go, God, how did this happen? And that was one of those days for me. But I'm glad. I don't know how it happened, but it happened.
I don't know if you guys remember, but that Yashu, I had a touch of that feeling. I'm laughing too, but I had a touch of that feeling in one of the earnings calls when I suggested he should do an interview with the retail YouTubers, Rob and Dave Lee. And then he kind of responded like a little frustrating, like, I don't have much time. This will probably be the last earnings call I do now. And then like people were messaging me like, thanks, Emmett. You made him not do any more earnings calls. They were all angry at me. So I feel like that was probably a microcosm of what you got. I probably got, and so I'm laughing because I can imagine how the messages you got.
No, it was mostly fine. Like I'm honestly, I'm way better now with dealing with a lot of the backlash that I get online than I was even a few years ago. So for me, I was laughing vicariously watching myself. But I mean, I'm honored. Look, whenever you get an Elon reply, it's great. When you get one with 3 paragraphs that CNBC, Reuters, Business Insider, everyone wants to run with. By the way, special shout out to all those guys. They all cut out my username handle, so none of them, I got no press for it. But it is what it is. I'm not looking to monetize. But it is something. I got one big reply. It was like 2,000 likes reply to Elon. I was like, this will be, bookmark this tweet. This will be the most important tweet in 5 to 10 years from now. Everyone make sure you look back on this tweet. I'm like, shit, like it's just getting internalized.
Remind me in 10 years, one of those tweets. Yeah.
I think so. And actually, I think you came off very respectful and very reasoned. And, you had your position, which wasn't in any way insulting anything. And then he answered. And then you said, okay, now you explained it that better, right? So you did a really good job, Yashu. I thought that was very mature of you, the way you handle it. So it was a really good response. Okay, thank you, everybody. Right. That was fantastic. I appreciate you both. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks,
guys.
All right. See you soon.
Good chatting.
Bye.
All right. Bye.